Radio. And what we're going to do is, since we had so many technical issues in that first segment, I know the folks on Justin TV watching, they heard it because I was connected to Kristen. Kristen was connected to me. We were connected to Justin TV, but we dropped out of the rinse feed. No fault of the studio. It was all on this end here. So what we're going to do is start the whole interview over again. The first thing I want to cover is, look, I'm going to read you some words. I want to read you some words on this day, middle of August 2012, the 29th of August 2012. I'm going to read you some words, and then I'm going to tell you how these words are significant to tonight's conversation. Assassination, attack, domestic security, drill exercise, cops, law enforcement, authorities, disaster assistance, disaster management, detection office, national preparedness, mitigation, prevention, response, recovery, dirty bomb, domestic nuclear detection, emergency management, emergency response, first responder, homeland security, maritime domain awareness, state of emergency, national security, gangs, looting, crash, riot, emergency landing, incident, facility, pipe bomb. Okay, everything I just rattled off to you there, these list of otherwise meaningless words that you just heard, they're not so meaningless if you're one of the agents listening, surfing the internet, or it's probably more like an NSA program, listening for the words that I just uttered, and most assuredly the words I just uttered, especially in continuous fashion such as that, will be flagged, they will be investigated, and you potentially could be looked at, air quotes, for using these words, for uttering these words. This is the United States of America on August the 29th, 2012. This is the land of freedom that the mainstream media would have you believe, that we have these never-ending wars, this continuous expansion of Empire America for. So we can have the freedom to be listened to by our government. And if you so much as dare to stand up for yourself, speak for yourself, well, they have ways of dealing with that too. All right, I'm going to bring in our guest, Kristen Meghan, activist, who's gaining some notoriety of late for her work in bringing to light the Brandon Robb story. But Kristen is joining us tonight you're in Tampa, correct?
Yes.
Okay, she's down there covering the charade, the freak show, the pretend vote that we're going to get here coming up in November. She's down there at the Republican convention. Kristen, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your patience while we got our technical issues worked out.
No problem, and thanks for having me on tonight.
You are very, very welcome. Why don't you give us a little bit of history about Kristen Meghan and what brought you into being an activist? I don't know if you even like being called that. I didn't for the first year or two that I was doing this, but now I kind of wear that moniker with a little bit of pride, because I certainly am an activist, if that means standing up and calling out tyranny.
Well, actually, I spent 9 years active duty in the Air Force, and I actually, in 2006, watched the documentary Terror Storm, put out by Alex Jones, and that really started to open my eyes to look at different perspectives. Working within government, you're really shut out to understanding what, other people hear. And watching that, my background is in chemistry, so I started to look at the facts of 9/11 and go, wait a second. This makes sense. And why wasn't I told this, in the official story? So, that kind of spiraled me into the whole truth movement. But, towards the end of my time, right around my 8.5-year mark in the Air Force, I had some things happen, and I actually separated 3 days before I was due to re-enlist due to a whistleblower situation. And I'll tell you what, I had some serious issues happen during that time, threats, and that just, it frankly really upset me. And I said, you know what? I'm no longer shutting my mouth. Being in the military, you have to be careful what you say about politics, the religion. You got the Hatch Act. So I just decided, you know what? If I'm going out, I'm going out as me. And I don't call myself an activist. I say I'm a patriotic loudmouth, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, well, patriotic loudmouth, activist, somebody standing up for yourself. What was, can you get into what the whistleblowing was all about? I mean, did you report KBR making $100 a plate and making sure everybody had two in the line, or what?
It's actually a very technical story, but just to give you the gist, my background is, again, is in chemistry, and I was an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist. So my job in the military was to basically know every single thing that anybody in the military was exposed to, whether it's something they were drinking, ingesting, touching, breathing, radiation. So there was a situation down in Robbins Air Force Base where we had some civilian workers being overexposed to some serious carcinogens.
Oh man, hold on a minute, because I do want to hear about that. That isn't that. I mean, that is technical, but I do want to hear about that because of our truncated schedule here. We're going to take this break now, but on the backside of this, we're going to hear the rest of Kristen's whistle blowing story. Hang tight. We'll be back in 3.5 minutes. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, your host. We are on with Kristen Meghan. We're going to continue her whistleblowing story. I do want to remind everybody, if you're a veteran, I want you to call in. I want to hear about your time in service. I want to hear if if you're listening to me now and you're under 40. If you're under 50 and you served this nation, you probably served in war. So call us up, tell us your story. If you have, even if it's just to give us the opportunity to thank you for your service, then do that. But get on the phone, 877-342-6673. I'll give it again, 877-342-6673. Brett will be standing by to take your call, and we'll get you on the air immediately. Kristen, you separated from the military, and let's be clear, let's let everybody know that 9 years in the Air Force, you separated under honorable conditions. But you did it because you were a whistleblower, and you were starting to tell us before the break cut us off that you were concerned about what people were ingesting. Is that correct?
Yes. Again, like I told you, my job was preventive health, basically, as an industrial hygienist. You have to Google that to understand it to save some time. But there was a situation where a bunch of employees were being overexposed or severely overexposed to what's called strontium chromate, which is very strong cancer-causing heavy metal. So I did some samples in a couple of shops on the base down at Robbins Air Force Base, Georgia, and they were very high, and people did get sick. There was a history of people either getting cancer or mouth sores, so I brought this to the attention of my command. And just to make a long story short, they did not want that information out. They would rather fix the problems that were causing the overexposures, which was the right thing to do, but legally, those people had to be notified. So I was basically threatened to go into mental evaluation because I was not complying. I respectfully listened to my command, but at the same time, it was an ethical issue. These people had a right to know. So there came a time where I was threatened and told that I was going to, if I didn't stop asking to release the records, that I would be put into mental health. And this exact quotation is what actually ignited my fire was, if you get put away in a mental institution, who is going to watch your daughter?
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me?
That was a flag. That was a flag, and I no longer feared losing my rank. I no longer feared losing my pay, losing my house. I didn't care anymore. You just brought in my child to this, and I'd never had any paperwork. I had all high scores during my time in active duty. I was a multiple decorated and award-winning NCO, so I left. 3 days before I was due to re-enlist, I left, and I went to a 4-star general, the media, and the union for the base.
Did you, the person that issued this threat, was this like your CO, or was it like a first sergeant, or was it higher up?
This was in my immediate chain of command, and I'm limited on certain things I can talk about, but I'll just say those people were held accountable.
For issuing this threat?
Yes.
But this has to come from somewhere, right? I mean, you're telling us now that they were dealt with. I'm assuming administratively, the people that issue these threats were dealt with. But the threat of losing your daughter or being committed to a mental facility, that has to come from somewhere. I mean, it isn't. It's like Abu Ghraib, right? There's just not a bunch of PFCs running around deciding that we're going to tell people that they're going to go to mental institutions if they speak out.
Well, this kind of relates to the whole picture of what is wrong with our current military. Those who are still in active duty can totally understand where I'm coming from with this. What happens is when you get high in the ranks,
Right.
Even though, let's say, they try to fix the situation with these exposure limits, the point was is they didn't want to admit to the previous mistake. And even though at the lower level, one person on a base does something wrong, the base commander can be held accountable, even though they might have had no hand in it. It's just that's what comes with the rank. So what's happening in the military ranks is it's no longer about the mission or the people. It's about individual promotion. So people kind of want to hush things down so that the higher commanders do not hear it, and therefore, hinder any future assignments or ability for promotion.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not saying that on behalf of the Air Force that was coming from the top. This was a local issue, but still, it's because of the culture. The culture is, hey, it's what can you do for yourself, not for the mission.
Which, we see that not just in the military, we see that throughout society, especially over the last, and never have we seen such an acceleration in this, I believe, as we've seen in the last, across the entire spectrum, right, across private sector, across public sector, across military, right, over the last, since the beginning of the war on terror generation, this has went out of control. Then the accelerator went to the floor as of 2008 when we had the financial crisis. Now everything is a crisis, and it's covered on every plane of existence that we have now. If it's financial, we have crisis for that. If it's traveling around this country, we have a crisis that we need to implement regulation on that. If it's military expansion around the planet, well, we make up crises around the planet so we can cover that. It is, without a doubt, this is turning into a planet that is going to be overrun by this doctrine of preemption, by this doctrine of if you say something, you're going to end up categorized and pigeonholed, and in a lot of cases, you're going to end up put in a psycho ward, and they'll call it something cute. They're not going to say you're arrested. They're not going to say, well, we're not violating Kristen's First Amendment rights. We're just setting her down and having a conversation with her for the next 10 years for her own good. I mean, it's a terrifying aspect of society right now.
It certainly is, and it's my story goes deeper than that, and that is because I started to really awaken to what was really going on. The military was no longer a defense; it was an irrational offense. So I actually held myself accountable. I was disappointed in myself for swearing my right hand to the Constitution and not really have fully read it and interpreted it. So in late 2006, when I actually started, studying history, and unlike what you learn in college and high school, but actually relating it to how this government is supposed to run. And I carried a pocket guide to the Constitution in my lower uniform pocket. And I would read it, and I supervised 5 different airmen under me, and I would try to educate them on the Constitution. And I was demonized for that. I was told that I was a disrespect to the uniform. This isn't the time or place. And I just couldn't swallow that. I thought, I was respectful about it, just reminding people, this is what is supposed to be the baseline for our foreign policy. And this is what the limitations of the government are.
And if you do that, not just in the military, but if you do that as just an average person in this country, I mean, the mainstream media has turned the notion that you want to be a nation of laws, a nation governed by the Constitution our forefathers gave us. If you talk like that, you're a threat, and you're crazy. Not only are you a threat, you're a crazy individual, and you're probably going to do something that involves killing people. So you need to be watched and looked at and followed and surveilled. And of course, again, it's for your own good and the safety of humanity.
And what's unfortunate is, I know each branch of the military has their own core values or sayings. In the Air Force, one of ours was integrity. So you're supposed to have integrity, but only when it's convenient for your mission. So, don't disagree. So it's pure hypocrisy. And I don't want people to think that I'm anti-military. I support the military. But I also am holding their feet to the fire to be held accountable for those who raise their right hand to that Constitution. You need to know it. You've got to understand. And I just think really people need to start disobeying unlawful orders respectfully. And there is that fear there. People fear losing their rank and their money. But let me tell you, I left with no dime to my name when I got out of the military. And I just said, no money is worth it. And I came out stronger, and I'm doing fine now. I tell you what, it's really rewarding. So don't let the money fear you.
No. Yeah, I mean, money comes and goes, and more than likely it goes. So your integrity is something you can keep for the rest of your life, and nobody can take. Kristen, Meghan, hang tight. We're going to take our break. We'll be back in 3.5 minutes. 29th day of August, Thursday. We are fortunate enough to be joined by Nate. I believe Nate's on the line. Former 11 Bravo. Okay, cool. Former 11 Bravo, which was an infantryman, also airborne infantry, 82nd Airborne. And his fiance is our guest tonight. Kristen, thanks for hanging out with us for this long evening, hour and a half. It's going to end up being worth of radio time. I wanted to, we still have Nate on the phone, so let's go back to what we were talking about, Nate, which is things that are being done in our name and how a lot of soldiers now, it seems like, are waking up to this. If you're like myself, there is a lot of sleep, but I believe there's a reason why the MIAC report came out. I believe there's a reason why we're seeing this effort to demonize veterans as potentially being where the next terrorist is coming from is going to be out of the military. In fact, I want to play for you guys a clip. It's only a couple minutes long, but it has everything to do with the Brandon Robb case. And this is the mainstream. This is Fox News talking about, are they going too far in violating free speech in this country? And I want to play this and get you guys' take on this ridiculous thing. Hold on a second. Here we go. Hold on a sec here. Let me wait. Talking about the anchor is asking, are they going too far? Are they violating too many rights by grabbing him, cuffing him, and bringing him off to a mental institution? Let's listen in.
Professional in the state, and that's what they acted on. Did they do anything wrong, Fred?
No, you know what, Martha? I don't think they did. Let's not forget that within the last 4 weeks, a military veteran shot and killed a bunch of Sikh pacifists and a police officer. We had the worst act of domestic terrorism in our country by an active military guy. And we've had all these recriminations about what happened in Colorado, about people saying that there may have been evidence that this guy was going to do something. So he hasn't been arrested. And quite frankly, law enforcement doesn't have the luxury of waiting to find out whether or not this guy's really serious. And he does have some issues, including his theory that our government was involved in the 9/11 terrorist attack. So I think he hasn't been arrested. He's been sent down for evaluation. No one's ever gone to jail for an evaluation.
There it is. I mean, the person speaking there is a former federal prosecutor, and he's talking
Kristen
about.
And I watched that guy. We had a good laugh about it. This comes from Fox News, so it can't be true, and they only reach 600 people nationwide. So we're not all that worried about it. But this is how they're going to move to demonize the veterans, and then they're going to start blaming everything on the veterans as if we're Al Qaeda. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, the veterans are waiting for me around the corner."
Absolutely, they're already doing it. I mean, this is why you hear, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, came out with a document. It was a warning document just a few weeks ago, talking about the upcoming conventions in Florida, and then the following convention for the Democrats, talking about most good little citizens will stay inside their little free speech zones, and they're not going to violate any law, and these guys are going to be just fine. But the ones that do, the ones that stand up and say something or push back, these guys are going to be anarchists. And these anarchists, as we well know, and this is where the mainstream media comes in, because they allude to it in the story, these anarchists, as we well know, they're terror-loving terrorists, and then they went back and talked about these Baltimore 5 or the Cleveland 5, this brain trust of folks who together, couldn't screw in a light bulb, but somehow they had this high-level plot to blow up a bridge inside of Cleveland. So we are automatically taking anybody who stands up and speaks out and putting them into a category. It's either they're a disgruntled veteran, or they're an anarchist, they want no government at all, or they're a domestic terrorist. And in fact, everybody's being wrapped up into this domestic terrorist moniker. And like it or not, like Fox News or not, which I do not, I don't like any mainstream media, the perceived left or perceived right mainstream media. I do watch them because this is the message that is being pumped out there. You get this federal prosecutor that has no problem at all with Brandon being, put to the ground, cuffed, and he has no problem saying this isn't an arrest. When you take somebody against their will, cuff them, take them away from their friends and their family and their loved ones, and you put them away in a hole 3 hours away from their family and defense team, guess what? I don't care what you call that. That is an arrest.
And you know what? That interview was actually more disturbing. And do you want to know why? I was contacted by a Fox producer for the authorization for them to use that video. Before I gave them authorization to use that video, I said, if you mention the quote that he used of "sharpen my axe, I'm here to sever heads," please note that those are music lyrics. I gave the name of the band, I embedded a YouTube video, and I actually put the number on the ticker of when those lyrics were said. I put in there very strongly, please advocate these are music lyrics. Did they even mention they were music lyrics? No, and that was the main platform that gentleman said was the direct threat. The "sharpen my axe, I'm here to sever heads." So this was completely fraudulent journalism.
But that doesn't change a thing. We had, every time I've quoted this, I forgot what network it was because they're all the same. But we had a mainstream media source moments after the Aurora shooting happened, saying what? That it was a former Tea Party member that was involved in the shooting in Aurora. It was completely erroneous. It wasn't true, but it didn't stop it from being reported. And then, a few days later, Page 3, they'll issue a retraction or an apology. It's like Brandon, right? He's hauled off. They don't call it an arrest. They take him away. And now he's, as you inform me, that they're going to continue prosecuting a lawsuit against it, a civil suit against the people involved. But the damage is done. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, the damage is they trotted this guy out. They had Fox News with their plastic-paid, beautiful spokesman come on there and talk about how free speech is going too far, and how that this guy had issues because he believed that the government might have had something to do with 9/11. Basically, reiterating the notion that if you speak out, you're a nut. So it really doesn't matter what happens. If he gets a settlement for a couple $1,000s for his civil rights being violated, the damage is done. And more importantly, the foundation is already laid. You speak out. If you don't see something and say something against people who speak out, then you're nothing more than a domestic terrorist.
It was a scare tactic on their part to make us veterans and everybody else who is speaking out afraid to do it publicly. And I guarantee you, I honestly thought about it. I was like, oh my God, they're after me. I'm sure other people thought the exact same thing, but we cannot bow down to this. It's terrorism against us.
Absolutely. Well, Kristen, tell us what you're seeing down there. You're down there at the GOP convention, and you've already told us that the police, they were the ones that received that warning from the DHS and the FBI, telling them to be on the lookout for rabble-rouser belligerents.
Yeah.
The mood that you're seeing, though, at least with the police, certainly isn't a mood that's leading you to believe that they're ready to go out and grab guns and violate people's rights.
Well, as corny as it sounds, I'll tell you what, there was almost an emotional moment. We had these designated free speech zones, which was a big joke to all of us. And all of us around Paul supporting veterans, they're joked, oh, we're the domestic terrorists. And we actually marched over to the RNC, and we respectfully asked the cops, are you going to confiscate our bullhorn? And one cop said to me, look, your free speech zone is wherever we're standing. So what they meant by they followed us. And people, I guess if the media caught a pan of that, they'd be like, oh, the cops are after the Ron Paul bots. They were there to protect us. They were standing behind us. It was amazing. I did not expect that.
That is awesome. We're going to continue the conversation. We're going to take this break 3 minutes long. We'll be back with Kristen and Brett hang tight. They're telling you to go ahead and say what you want to say, but not to take your bullhorn. And then when you pressed them a bit, talking about martial law, what was the response?
Oh, I explained to them about the documents circulating, and basically saying veterans are the next domestic terrorists. And some were actually awake to it. Some of them are info warriors. Some of them followed alternative media, and some had a hard time believing it. But they were kind of debating it amongst them. But I actually saw a guy get on his phone and Google it. So I think it was really very awakening to some of them. Of, are you serious? We're actually the ones that you guys are us. It was almost like a culture shock to some of them, but I just can't stress enough how it was almost too good to be true. They were even handing us out water, and we joked, "Don't drink it if the seal is broken." But I tell you, I think a lot of these liberty activists here needed that, because it just shows that this group of 500 police officers, could join us in nothing physical or violent, but just in an informational awareness.
Well, we certainly need it, and we have had, on occasion, police officers call in that, some of them were listening to this program or other alternative media, but, unfortunately, it's like we were talking about, most are not really aware of what they take the same oath as the military, and most of them are not aware of, the kind of information that is found in alternative media. I think more and more are waking up, but, the vast majority, unfortunately, are just going to do what they're told.
Yeah. Well, and what I told them was, we started out as kind of a joke, is I live in Chicago, so this was a culture shock to me that I could peacefully just walk by with a camera and not be threatened. So they laughed when I said I was from Chicago. That, sorry, So they're even aware of the bad name that police are getting across the country. So I'm not saying that they're even representative for all the Florida service people, but this was just, I just can't say I was shocked.
Well, here's the deal. We're coming up at a time, we're coming into a time that, some real tough choices people are going to have to make. We've been led down this path that, the red and the blue team are going to each take their turn, and one of them is going to turn the corner and make things better. But I do believe, and I'll get your take on this, I do believe that sooner rather than later, all of this is coming to a head. And I'm not just talking about, the free speech zones or soldiers returning home or domestic terrorists. I'm talking all of it. The whole kit and caboodle is coming to an end. When you look at our financial situation, where we're doubling our national debt every 4 or 5 years, you look at the military situation where our guys are so extended and they're so spread thin around the world that the potential to be shown as nothing more than a paper tiger is very much a real thing. And you have soldiers doing 3, 4, 5 tours of combat duty in this modern military age. You couple that with the breakdown of society in this country, and not the breakdown because people want to be civilly disobedient, but it's unfortunate that a lot of people, more and more every single day, every single month, get thrown into a new category, and the category is that of a non-person. Maybe they graduate from college and they have to move back home with mom, so they're not a statistic in the employment numbers. They're just not. They don't exist. So we end up having this quasi draft because there's not a lot of jobs out there. They end up in the military or moving back home with mom and dad. Or you have the people 1 million plus a year losing their homes that are being demonized by the mainstream as being nothing but no good bums. And the list goes on of things that are starting to crumble. The social safety nets are coming apart. Our military is so extended now that we have record numbers of suicides inside our military. Our financial system has been utterly obliterated, and the only ones coming out on top are the ones who brought us here. The world is getting sick of us spreading this disease of air quote democracy around the world, and it just seems that as a nation, as a planet, things are about to change, and my hope, and it always has been my hope, is to do everything possible to get people on board with at least the realization of what's coming. And that's why I'm really excited to see you out there spreading the word, you and your fiance, and here you are taking a trip down to Tampa to cover something that that the mainstream media won't cover. They'll give us the highlights, they'll give us the backslapping and the patriotic fervor and the garbage, but it takes people like you, normal, average Americans who care about this country, care about their future, to step up, turn the camera on, put it in someone's face, and ask some tough questions. So we need more people like you and your fiance. Unfortunately, the question that I want you to comment on is it too late? Are we heading to a place of which there is no return? That can go to both of you, too.
It's never too late.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. It's never too late, but I do think that we are pretty close to that cliff. And if we do go over that cliff, I think it's what happens immediately after. I think that, I was talking to a friend today, as important as this sounds, it's almost like if the collapse did happen, or martial law did happen, it might be a semi-good to wake all the people up who think we're nuts to saying, look, this happened, we told you it would happen, so then at that point we might get more people on our side.
That's a good point. And hold your thought. We're gonna do this break. I rattled off too long there. Martial law, is it coming? Would it be a good thing? We're gonna talk about that on the backside of this break. Stay tuned. Yes, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, along with Megan and Nate. I posed a question. You brought the statement that you think if martial law occurred, that that might not be such a horrible thing because it would wake a lot of people up. But let me get both your take, and let's start with Nate because we shut him out on the last segment there. First of all, I don't think we're going to see a national martial law. I think we'll see regional. We could see regional crisis lead to checkpoints on highways. We've talked about at length. The Viper teams are out there. If you think TSA is just in the airports, forget about it. They're not.
Don't get me started.
What's that?
Yeah. Don't get me started.
Yeah, well, they're not. I mean, as you well know, you see them when you try to travel through airports. But the Viper program, which is expanding this year, is on highways, it's on bridges, it's on bus depots. Eventually they want to have a blue shirt everywhere you go, so you can be dealt with. And of course, it's all in the guise of protecting us from terrorism. But the fact is, you have a 1 in 3 million chance of dying in a terrorist act. The odds of you being hit by lightning are even higher than that. So I don't think we're going to see national martial law, but I think that the clampdown apparatus is in place where they don't need that. But I do think we could see a lot of regions like we've seen recently in Oakland, where you just have this militarized police go in, and of course the mainstream will have Fox News and all these other ones reporting how these rabble-rousers are being dealt with as it's a good thing. But every time that does happen, more and more folks pop up in alternative media. So Nate, martial law, is it coming? Good thing, bad thing?
I believe if it does come, it's pretty much on its way. We've lost so many freedoms in America, but as you're saying, like the TSA and all this other stuff, as long as C-SPAN, CNBC, Fox News, all these people paint a beautiful picture on it, half the sheeple will completely follow it, welcome it, and accept it. Most of us, there's not enough people out here ready to fight. A lot of people are ready to just roll over and accept it. They have the idea that the government does it, so they're going to do what they want. They say out loud, they'll say to you, what can I do? I'm only one person. You hear it all the time, and it's like, yeah, you're one person, tell another person. There's two people. Get it, So I believe it's on its way, but we still can, with the vast majority, point it out as being a bad thing, and with alternative media picking up the way it is, a lot of people will see it and think to themselves, you know what, this is right. I have lost so much.
Yeah. You talk about the sheeple, and the people will just go along with it, and that rings so true because we have, a lot of you guys talk to folks every day. I talk to folks every day. I still get the Romney's going to make things better, and he's going to turn the corner, and absolutely infuriates me when I hear this, because we're just falling for the same rhetoric, and nothing's going to change. We're going to still see a continuation of the Patriot Act. We're still going to see more legislation that will be claimed to be needed in order to keep us safe and keep the homeland secure. So I do think every time that there's a clampdown, it does wake more people up. It needs to happen faster, though. Maybe I'm just too pessimistic on this. But Meghan brought to our attention that what they do, they played the RNC played the Ron Paul tribute video tonight.
Yes, I actually just got about 5 text messages 30 minutes ago, and they played the RNC tribute video. And everyone, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently it was shockingly good. And apparently Mitch McConnell made a statement like, "This is why people, fear Ron Paul." I don't know the exact quote. I prefer to see it come out of his mouth on the video. But yeah, I'm curious to see it. Hopefully people will go, "Why isn't this guy on the stage?"
Well, I have it queued up here, so let's, Brett, let us play this through, and even if we go to the break a little bit, if that's okay, it's only 4 minutes long, which takes us right about to our next and final break, but let's get this played, because I want to hear it as well. So here we go. Ron Paul tribute video played tonight at the RNC.
It's the American story. Charting your own path. Forging new ways forward. Not because it's the easy way, but because it's the right way. And for those with dedication, character, faith, and conviction. Sometimes that lonely path paves the way forward for millions. Ron Paul, 22 years in Congress, he's never voted for a tax increase, never voted for a debt ceiling increase, never wavered, never backed down.
The role of government ought to be for the protection of liberty, not for the intrusion in our private lives, not for the intrusion in economic affairs.
You can't keep borrowing from China. You can't keep printing money. We have to cut some spending.
I believe in limited government. I believe in individual liberty. We've spent too much. We tax too much. We borrow too much.
It's bankrupting this country.
I knew I did not want to be a politician all my life. Matter of fact, I was surprised I ever won, because this message, I thought, would not go well with the people, because I'm not making wild promises. Of course, my wife warned me this was a dangerous project, because she said you could end up getting elected.
And he said, no, I'm not going to be elected. He said, you have to be like Santa Claus. You have to give them something. He says, I don't want to give them something or bring home the bacon. He says, I want to give them their freedom.
It's been a consistent theme since his very first election that government's grown too large, and as government grows larger, your freedoms grow smaller. And he's fought this through the years.
When I first got to the House, I thought Ron Paul was nuts. He was out there talking about the Federal Reserve, the monetary system. But more and more I found myself voting with him.
He's been talking about these things since the early 1970s, and he hasn't wavered, he hasn't buckled, even when he's had to stand alone.
I've always put politicians into two categories. They're either here to make a point or they're here to make a difference. Ron Paul is the only one I know who made a difference by making a point.
We need lower taxes, less regulations, and we need to free up the market.
He's been an absolute fiscal hawk, one of the most fiscally conservative members in the history of the Congress.
I can guarantee you we wouldn't have a $16 trillion debt if we had 435 Ron Pauls in Congress.
The more I think about him over the years, the more inspiring it is of what he's done. And not being afraid of anything, but willing to stand for what he thought was right. Ron Paul was Tea Party before there was a Tea Party.
If you want honesty and integrity, look for Ron Paul. And that's based on his faith and based on his belief in the Constitution.
He's willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do because his convictions are so deep.
As long as we live beyond our means, we are destined to live beneath our means.
One of the extraordinary things about my father is that, the lobbyists don't even come by his office. They don't even bother to come by because they know he can't be bought.
And that passion is born of a deep and abiding conviction that these are correct principles.
He stands for freedom. He stands for liberty.
He stands for the traditional American values that made this country great.
The longer we go and the deeper in debt we get, the more apparent it is that Ron Paul was right all those years.
Whether people want to admit it or not, Ron Paul changed the conversation.
Arg. I'm so mixed on that. And Brett, if we got to go to break, just start it whenever we need to. But I'm so torn by that, and here's why. Well, you know what? I'll save it till after break. We're going to do our last break of the program. We'll be back in 3.5 minutes. Hang tight. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, your host. Kristen is our guest, and her fiance Nate. Nate, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
You're a trooper, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate that. I want to comment a little bit about the Ron Paul video, because here's the deal. My guts were ripped out, literally, not literally, figuratively, by the Ron Paul campaign. And some people right now are thinking, well, it wasn't Ron Paul, it was Rand Paul. But I refuse to believe that, that one doesn't know what the other's doing, and that there isn't a conversation over a turkey dinner somewhere saying, hey, Dad, I'm about to endorse Mitt Romney. Now, that isn't Ron Paul endorsing Mitt Romney. In fact, to date, he still hasn't endorsed Mitt Romney, and I believe the things that were said in that video are true. But I watched that video, and what pops into my mind is patting a little 5-year-old on the head saying, oh, you did a good job with your science project. Thanks for showing us what it's all about to try. Here's a participation ribbon. I appreciate everything he's done, but when he's treated as a marginalized to the point of being just a footnote. If more people were like Ron Paul and followed the Constitution, it isn't a matter as if more people were like Ron Paul. We need to demand that these people don't have a choice to be anything other than like Ron Paul. We need to demand that they follow this Constitution, because we're not a nation of 535 congressmen and senators. We're not a nation of people who can just go and make up laws as they see willy-nilly, as long as there's enough special interest cash funding their rise to political power. We need to demand that they follow this Constitution, this rule of law, because we're a nation of laws, not a nation of people deciding that they can make up whatever they want, and that they think it's cute that there's one member out of 535 member body of Congress that will stand up and say, wait, we need to return to the Constitution. So I thought it was a great video. I thought it was full of information that was true about Ron Paul, but again, at the same instance, it reminded me of a token gesture of, we'll placate the folks that are out there in the streets crying for a constitutional government. Kristen, comment on that.
Can you say your last point again? I'm sorry, it kind of cut out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, and this probably goes to the technical issues that Brett's been hollering at me all night. I just said the video in general I thought was great. It was a great tribute to Ron Paul. But
condescending.
But condescending, yeah, very condescending. Good job, Ron Paul. Good job, freedom-loving patriots around the country. You got our attention. And that aspect of it is infuriating to me.
Well, it's almost like saying this guy is a hero. He cured cancer, but sorry, we still don't want you. I mean, I think it's very condescending. But I'm still glad they played it, because hopefully some people will look at that and just think, wait a minute, why didn't this guy even get to speak here if he cares so much?
Yeah, that's a great point.
The RNC is shooting their own stuff. They're contradicting themselves, and hopefully more people just wake up to that. This whole RNC thing has been sickening. I was right outside there yesterday with everything they did with the delegates. I mean, I'm not shocked, but it's just, man, they kicked us while we were down to the last minute.
No doubt. Nate, give us your thought. Give us your take on. I know you just heard it for the first time too, on the video.
At the very end of the day, they kind of sent him off in a bad way, but his message still went out. It's still a victory. People still know Ron Paul's name, and they know his message, and they'll continue to learn. So it wasn't positive what happened to him, but his message is still a great thing that is going to ring for a long, long time.
I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right. Kristen, I definitely want to talk about your YouTube channel. Where can we go to subscribe to it? I know you were telling me you used to have thousands and thousands of subscribers, but you got shut down. You can get into that if you want.
Yes, I did.
Why don't you get into that a little bit?
Well, I am a whistleblowing veteran, and I've worked in the federal government for 11 years, so I don't think certain people like what I say. So I got those fake, fraudulent, copywritten strikes against me. You get 3 and you get shut down. So a lot of people have been trying to get to go to my new channel, which is I Am Kristen Meghan, and that's KRISTEN And I only have maybe about 6 or 7 videos on there right now because I just restarted this channel. So a lot of people go, wait a minute, if you've done all this stuff, why isn't there anything on there? It's because, I was shut down. But I have a lot of stuff to upload down here from Tampa. When I get back to Chicago and get any of my equipment, I'm going to upload those. So please stay tuned to my channel. Again, it's I Am Kristen Meghan. I'm actually going to repost a new site, so I'll let you know that. So hopefully, if I do get to come back on, we can share some information through that. But yeah, I kind of have a new perspective through my videos. They're serious but yet humorous.
Well, like I said, I watched the one you did on the TSA, and I absolutely loved it, and I agree with you 100% on it. I Am Kristen Meghan on YouTube. I'm trying to drop the link into the chat right now. Let's subscribe to her and get her subscription base back up there. In fact, I think maybe after the program tonight or early tomorrow morning, I'll do a promo video for your channel and try to get some folks back to resubscribing to you that might have probably were subscribed to you and then couldn't figure out why you were shut down. But we'll get those numbers back up because I want people to see the information you're gathering down there in Tampa. And you had received, I think, in that last break, we were talking about how you were happy and surprised that the police were coming out in support of freedom, but you had just received a report or saw a picture that things might be turning a little bit uglier down there.
Yeah, a friend of mine who was downtown early today posted a photo on his Facebook of, let me see here, it looks like a couple hundred police personnel in riot gear. Now, this picture just only shows them lined up. So I do understand that there was a march. Luke Radowski from We Are Change talked about that earlier. There was a march going to be downtown. So maybe, they're just in preparation. But I'm like, don't make me sound bad, guys. Hopefully there was no problems. But I'm hoping that the media who's demonized all these Ron Paul supporters and all the veterans, when these police see how peaceful we are, I hope they, just realize what a waste of tax dollars. There's no acid eggs.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on the hope train, but the reality train is telling me, they'll spend millions of dollars to help convict. I'm doing air quotes here, and you can't see me, but I'm doing convict a bunch of homegrown terrorists, and that's what we've seen time and time again over the last couple of years. I brought up the Cleveland Five. These guys were really, seriously, when you saw the profiles on and read about them, they were a bunch of dupes, and millions of dollars were spent by the Joint Terrorism Task Force, which included local law enforcement, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, a bunch of alphabet agencies, and millions of dollars spent to prevent something that probably wasn't going to happen anyway without the FBI coming on board and stirring up the pot a little bit. But again, I'm trying to be hopeful, and I hope that you're right. We see the Ron Paul supporters, the Tea Party supporters, or Occupy out there being peaceful and demonstrating, and some good comes of it. But it almost seems to me that government went to the point that they've set up the apparatus, they've warned the people that this is going to happen. It's almost to the point now where they're ready to instigate. We see the agent provocateurs and hear the stories about agent provocateurs. It seems like at some point we're going to see some event that is tragic.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we got to remember there was National Guard people here. This is to make us think that this is normal. You know, this police presence and having the military personnel cover a political event is normal. Those of us that serve know it's not, and I just hope that people don't get accustomed to this. And it's just sad and pathetic. I don't know what else to say because I'm just mind-boggled at where we're headed here. And again, I am from Chicago, so I mean it's bad there. So maybe I'm not as shocked down here.
Well, and you should be alarmed. I mean, you know, we have drones flying. We have these helicopter simulations of attacks in cities such as Chicago. Chicago just had the Black Hawk, training exercises down. I don't know what street it was, Wacker or whatever, during the what was it, the G20 conference that was going on there. Minneapolis just had more exercises going on. I mean, these are military exercises, military hardware, military assets being used right here in the homeland to protect us from. I don't even know what. I mean, what are we protecting us from? From, like I said, 1 in 3 million chance of being attacked by a terrorist or being killed by a terrorist. It is a boondoggle at best. Nate, I want to thank you very much for hanging out with us. We're quickly running out of time, and I want to give you a few seconds to air your thoughts.
I just want to say thank you for having me and touch on the last few points that you made. As far as, the soldiers in the street and all that other stuff, people that are asleep think it's great. They're awesome. They cheer it. They welcome it. And they love it for some reason because unlike, the other wars where they demonize veterans for going over killing people like we are now, the people are behind veterans and they buy a little yellow ribbon for their car and they're pro-soldier and pro-war. But these are people who have not seen the fate of someone's family that you just kicked in their door and shot their father and husband. These people they don't know what war brings. They only see what's on television. And we just have to wake up to that. And
I couldn't say it any better. I mean, understanding the carnage of war will make you hate it. And understanding the carnage of war that's being done in our name, when we understand the reasoning behind it, not the propaganda that we're sold, but the true reasoning behind why we have men and women around this world committing these kind of acts in our name. It is absolutely disgusting and horrifying when you know the truth. I thank you very much, Nate, for wrapping it up nicely there. Kristen Meghan, it is I Am Kristen Meghan on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us for this entire 2-hour episode. It was a little bit truncated. I appreciate you putting up with our technical difficulties on my end tonight, and we'll get you back on soon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have a good night. I appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat. And again, everybody listening, they had to go through the technical drama. I apologize, and we'll get that fixed and cleaned up for tomorrow night's program. Enjoy Jeff Francis coming up next. Have a good night. Peace.